and
know.
Chris.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, everyone.
So you would have noticed.
Gotta do the Zoom wave. Yeah.
Yeah, the Zoom wave. You would
Or
have
the
noticed
Mexican
from
wave.
Chris's voice that again we have, like last week we had Kiki, and Kiki originally was from Zimbabwe. Chris, tell us where you're originally from, because that's not an East London accent there, is it?
No, I'm not from around these parts. I am from Texas originally, but I've actually lived over here in the UK for over 20 years now. So I guess you could call me a bit of a Texas transplant.
And do you get to travel back to Texas much?
Yeah, I try and get back every year, a couple years actually. Yeah, I still got family in Houston, which is where I'm from.
Exciting. Again, just sounds so glamorous, you know. There's me, Essex, born and bred, still got my white stilettos in the cupboard. What can I say? Oh, fantastic. Chris, we're going to be talking about sort of change and managing through change. And I know it's something that you work with a lot with your particular clients. And I know it's something you feel very passionate about. And we've spoken about that beforehand. But before we sort of get into the nitty gritty around sort of change, and I know you've got some fabulous tools to share with us. It'd be great just to let us know really sort of your journey to sort of where you are now as a coach and working with people on change.
Yeah, well, I think change has kind of been a common theme throughout, I guess, both my personal life and my working life. So I guess it's pretty appropriate as to have this as a topic. But yeah, I mean, my coaching journey, I guess it actually really started, you could say, in my teens. Both my parents were really heavily into personal development and positive thinking. And it's strange. I remember thinking they were a bit woo at the time, and now I'm oddly finding myself following in their footsteps. But it got me very interested in people and how we can work best and how we can communicate. And I carried that through into my university years. I did a degree in something called speech communication on how people can communicate better. And one of my first jobs when I left university was actually with a company called Dale Carnegie, who does a very famous course called the Dale Carnegie course on personal development and public speaking, which was fantastic. But then I left Houston and I found myself up on the East Coast. And that was when my career in what we call business change and transformation began, because I joined a company that was helping companies to put in these big IT systems where it joined up all the different areas of the company. And with these projects, there was a lot of change happening, a lot of organizational design happening and mergers and people's jobs changing. And it was pretty exciting because I got to work with some pretty big name companies. My first company was Johnson & Johnson. And you'd go into these companies and you'd learn how things were going to work with the new system and how people's jobs were going to change. And then my role as a trainer was to come in and understand that and then basically deliver that training and that change to the people. And so that was really exciting. And while I was up there, I met my future husband, who was English. And that's how I came to then find myself over in the UK. And I had a bit of a career gap. So I was home for a while raising a couple boys. And then I got back into these programs about 7 years ago with Tate and Lyle and Volkswagen and Jaguar Land Rover. It all sounds very glamorous. And it was pretty cool because it gave me a really good understanding of how business works and how people within a business works. And I got to work in a lot of industries and with people from all over the world and people from the CEO to the guys on the shop floor. But the thing I noticed is that everyone had a problem with change. And what I often found is that I was in the position of having to help people make sense of that change and kind of sell them on the change, because sometimes the communication wasn't so great on what the changes were going to be. And I just, the goalposts had moved and things had really changed quite a lot from when I first started in change to when I got back into it. And it felt as though I was kind of ticking a box sometimes because people weren't embracing the change. We were training them to do things and they weren't going off and doing it. They were going to do their own thing. And it was kind of like, wait, what is going on here? And these projects were really demanding. They kind of take the life out of you. You're kind of all consuming. And so I had a bit of a burnout, to be honest. And then I took some time to kind of think it through. And whilst I was on that journey, I happened to go to an event and I sat next to a lady who was a coach from the coaching academy. And she told me about the 2-day event and said, look, go along and you'll get some tools. And if you decide to go through this training, great. But if you don't, you'll still get something to move you forward. Because if you're not moving forward, you're going nowhere. And I thought, okay, great. And I went along and I was absolutely blown away. It was that light bulb. I was like, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to do this coaching thing. I'm going to do this kind of training. that's it, job done. So I dived in and I got a little carried away with the coaching thing. So I've now done the personal performance diploma. I've just qualified as an NLP practitioner. I'm DISC accredited. I'm finishing up my small business diploma, and I've done about 7 CPD days. And my experience with the coaching academy the whole way through has been incredible. I've had fantastic training and mentoring and support, and it's been hugely inspiring. But then I thought, okay, so great, I've become a coach. What do I do with it? How's it become a business? And when I started to kind of connect the dots and think, well, what was it that got me into this in the first place? It came down to helping people to love what they do, because that was the reason I made my own transition. So what I focus on now with my coaching is to help people to either find a career that they love, or to help businesses to build places that people actually want to work and embrace change. And I use some digital tools alongside of that. I use the DISC profiling, I use strength profiling, and I've got an employee engagement diagnostic that I use, and I'm also learning how to do something called micro coaching to put my coaching into an app. So all really, really exciting stuff, but change is the constant theme throughout all of it.
Unmute myself. Gosh, I mean, that's just incredible. That journey. What was it that sort of made you decide on change and not sort of other areas? Because your experience is so broad, isn't it? So what was it about sort of change that sort of made you sort of think, right, okay, this is the area really for me to sort of niche in?
Well, because everything that we do as a coach, it is all about change and transformation. That's the business that we're in, isn't it? It's helping people to make a change or make a transition into being a better them, unleashing their potential. And it's a constant. We can't escape it. It's always around us. We always have to adapt to it. And I think, as we've certainly seen this year, finding ways to manage that change and that uncertainty is quite key if we're going to thrive and be the person that we want to be.
No, for sure. With that in mind, I've got a little poll that I know you've got another poll that you're going to sort of ask later on, but we've got a little poll which we thought we might sort of launch, and just to sort of get a bit of a feel of how people react to change. So Adrian, do you mind launching the poll number 1 with just the one question on it for me? That would be great. Oh, not that one, the other one. There should be another one there. That's the one. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got a little sort of poll here around how you guys feel about change. So as you can see on the screen there, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is bring it on, I love a new challenge, and 1 is change is hard and I struggle, I feel overwhelmed. Let's go a little bit of a straw poll. Remember, all of our polls that we do are always anonymous. And so we can't see who individually is voting, just the number of people that are voting. So give that a try. We'll just give that a few moments there to settle. So it's about 56% of you voted. So we might just give it just a couple of more seconds. Okay, 62 of the 75 of us, so 84% so far. Just give it a little moment. And okay, so I think people who are going to vote have voted. So let's end the polling, Adrian, and just share the results. That would be fantastic. So as you can see, there's a real spread, and I think that is right. So some of us feel, yep, bring it on. The majority of us on the call really are sort of the 3 and the 4 sort of sitting in the middle. But it would make sense that also some of us find change really tricky. So, we've got a couple at that 2 and that 1 as well. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because change is such a topical thing. And today we had a little bit of a change. I don't know if you noticed. We had some music playing. Now, those of you that have been on coaching conversations before will know that we haven't normally play music. So that was a little bit different. For some of you, you might have thought, oh yeah, this is good. There's a couple of thumbs up coming. And for some of you, it might not have been so. But what's interesting is, because it was something a little bit different, but I was expecting it to be different, it still threw me out a little bit. So I haven't introduced the wonderful Adrian. Forgive me, Adrian. I do like to make sure that you get to see some of the faces behind the scenes here at the Coaching Academy. So Adrian is the one that puts all of our marketing together and our social media, and she's also here to support you during this call today. So Adrian, I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. So hello, everyone. It's lovely to be here on our weekly coaching conversations. And as usual, as Sharon said, I'm just here to support you all. So if you do have any questions about the topic, about the Coaching Academy, about coaching in general, and how we can support you in your coaching journey, please feel free to message me and I will be happy to help you.
Thank you. And Adrian's going to keep her eye on the chat box as well, so that we don't miss any of your questions whilst Chris is with us today. Now, I know some people on the call today will be very well established in their coaching journey and come back to connect with like-minded people. And there'll be some of you that are just on the beginnings of your journey. But equally, there may well be people here today that have never even, thought about training to be a coach. And maybe now in this time of change, certainly what I've found is that, people have had that time to stop and reflect and think, actually, is what I'm doing really for me? So we've had quite a lot of people, and it may well be that those of you that are coaches out there are finding that with your clients. They're thinking, well, you know what? I don't know what I want, but I know that I don't want what I've got right now, because change has made people reflect on that. And, you may be recognizing it in with your clients, but equally, if there are some people here today that are curious about, what is this thing about coaching? And I'd really love to be able to work for myself. I know definitely Adrian has popped that in the box as well. Michelle has actually said, for me, it depends where change is occurring in my life. And I think that's really true, isn't it? It depends. Sometimes we can have change in our lives that actually is quite, we embrace it and we find it quite exciting. But other areas, as Michelle said, some areas, I might feel panic. My Coaching Academy journey is definitely helping me to manage change. Well, that's really good to know. And you're in the right place here today as well. I was sharing with Adrian, I must share this with you, Chris. I was sharing with Adrian the other day that I tend to consider myself to be a fairly resilient person. I mean, you can never go for 100%, because you never know when life's going to throw you a curveball and your bucket of resilience overflows.
Yeah.
It's about that self-awareness. And I was in the hairdressers a couple of weeks ago, and normally, sort of go in and I say hi to everybody and I've got my mask on, but there were a couple of people in the hairdresser that didn't have a mask on, and it really bothered me. It really bothered me. So, we never know when we approach something different, when we're maybe even our behavior change might be different as well. So I think you've said to me before when we've been talking, Chris, change is constant, and coaching, as you say, is about sort of managing and helping our clients to sort of manage that. So tell me, why is change so important to you, and what you're going to share with us today?
Well, so it's important because it's something we're all having to deal with. It's obviously very timely and topical, and whether we like it or not, we have to deal with change. And obviously, coaching, as we're here to talk about today, it's all about helping people to make change and manage those changes. So what we're going to talk about today, though, is in order to understand this, I'm going to share with you a little bit about, what is the kind of mental process that we all go through when we go through a change, because it's the same for everybody. It doesn't matter where we are or where we come from. It's the same for all of us. And just understanding a few of the obstacles that kind of get in the way of us making the changes that we want to make, because that kind of gives us a bit of a context, both personally and also as we work with our clients as a coach. It gives us a bit of empathy and understanding. And then we're going to look at a couple tools where you can manage uncertainty and also kind of try and learn how to kind of catch that pause between stimulus and response, so that we can respond to change in a way that's effective for us.
Why would you say, it sounds brilliant, Chris, and why would you say it's really important for us to be able to navigate and manage change, or support our clients to navigate and manage change? Why is that important?
Well, because I think if we're going to become the people that we want to become, there's usually some form of a change that's necessary, because we fall into these kind of habitual ways of thinking. It's because of how our brains are wired. It's trying to keep us safe. And so we fall into these patterns. And in order to change those patterns, it takes effort, and it takes a bit of support sometimes, because it doesn't just come naturally. It's just something that we tend to do. And so I think it's quite important to have an understanding of that, so that we can evolve and we can untap that potential. I guess that's my mission when I say I hope people love what they do, is that all of us have incredible potential inside of us, but sometimes we need a bit of help and support to get that out.
For sure. And what about you? How do you manage change?
That's a good question. Well, I've been learning a lot over the last few months in particular. I think having done my NLP course, and I've discovered mindfulness, which has been a godsend, and just increasing my awareness of how those mental processes work, and learning to catch myself. It does take practice, but I am finally getting a little bit better at it. And just starting to have some tools and things to hand that I know I can grab, and also other coaches and people that I know that I can call on for support. But the thing I realized about change recently was that everything that's ever come about that's been really good or exciting about my life, it's come about because either I took a risk, I had a conversation, or I was just curious and I started looking into things. And so that's really helped me to kind of recognize that, everything I want, it really is on the other side of just taking those actions and getting myself out there.
And that's about, when we were talking about that last week a little bit with Kiki, that's sort of about, making yourself vulnerable, isn't it? And sort of like opening ourselves up to potential, sort of risk or whatever. And it's that stepping out of our comfort zones, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is really true. Now, I know you've got a little bit of a PowerPoint slide and some fantastic takeaway tools, some of which some of us might already be aware of, but for me, I know one of the tools, I can never hear about it enough. So
oh wow, so I can't wait to hear what that one is.
I think you'll know.
Okay, great.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to you, Chris, for you to sort of take the reins and take us through some information and some tips and some tools for us to use, not just for ourselves, but also for our clients as well.
Okay, great. Okay, well, listen, I think what we'll do is, shall we quickly launch that second poll, Adrian, if you would, just to kind of set us up in terms of kind of how we think about change. You just take a second to do that. So I'm just curious to know, just when you hear the word change, how do you respond to that? And secondly, how much do you like it if it's sudden or you don't have control over it? And, okay, I'm starting to see some votes coming through. Yeah, looks like we've got, a good mixture here. If any of you did the DISC conversation a couple weeks back, you might recognize some similarities with these choices in terms of how some of the DISC personalities. DISC is a personality profiling system, and it's a really good way to measure how people respond to change. So interesting. So we've got, a fair number of people that are up for adventure. I think I might fall into that category a little bit. Yeah. And how much do we like it? As long as it's fun and this is really interesting to see the mix of personalities that we've got there. Okay, so give it just a couple more seconds. And has everyone voted? Okay, and Adrian, if you could just stop it there for me, please. Super, okay. Well, this is very interesting. I think it looks as though we have very similar personality types on the call today. So lots of people that are up for an adventure and it's fun and interesting. As long as it's fun and interesting, I'm good. The key thing about this, you'll notice, is that a lot of us, we often prefer change if we have some degree of control over it. It's when it kind of gets landed on us that we really aren't too happy about it. So I'm going to share with you a couple of slides here now, just to kind of talk you through. I see a few familiar faces here. Let's see, and find my screen share. Okay, good. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to take a quick look at what gets in the way of making a change. Now, hopefully you'll recognize some of these. So the key thing, the first one, you don't see the need or the benefits. That's, that's typically where people are. It's kind of the what's in it for me, or they don't even know that if they change this aspect of something, that it could be better. And I used to see a lot of this on these change programs. People like, oh God, no, what really? Why do I need to do this? Competing priorities. I think we can probably relate to that, juggling home and work and homeschooling and all the crazy things we've had going on during COVID. And fatigue, I think, is another one that we probably all relate to. Just no physical or mental or emotional energy to deal with the change, because change is kind of draining sometimes. It takes a lot of energy, or we worry about the ripple effects. Oh my gosh, what happens if this happens or that happens? And it's being afraid of that loss of control. We're going to talk about that a bit more later. And resentments, feeling a bit cynical. Oh yeah, I've seen that change before. No, or I tried this and it didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. Or it's too difficult, or we don't have a system to kind of hold us accountable and support us as we go along, or there's too many changes, we're just overwhelmed. I can relate to the overwhelmed bit myself. Or it feels like a loss or a failure, or our beliefs get in the way. It's not possible, I can't do it, or we just don't genuinely have the skills or the support we need, or we're afraid of the success. And I'd just be curious if you comment in the chat, what kind of obstacles to change have you seen recently? Have any of those resonated with any of you? Overwhelm. Yeah, Roberta, I can relate to that. Lack of control. Yeah, definitely. Oh, I think my chat's hung. I can't see anybody else. Anyone else commenting? Other people. Oh, that's an interesting one. Fatigue. Security. Uncertainty. Yeah. Oh, uncertainty is a big one. We're going to talk about that. COVID with the ups and downs. I'm not in control. Definitely. Comparison. Negative reactions. Oh, look, it's all like coming through. Oh my gosh. Can you even just seeing those chat come through? Can't you just feel a bit like, oh, it's a bit like that with change. It's all coming through very rapidly at month. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Change, people. Good change is difficult. Yeah, it is, because it's the uncertainty, isn't it? And it's a lack of control. That's right. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. But see, the thing about this is that actually, this is where the opportunity lies for us as a coach, because this is one of the ways that we can, I say one, there's multiple ways that we can help our clients through all these changes. And as you probably saw some of those up on the slide, maybe you were thinking, oh yeah, if I could help people to overcome this challenge, that in and of itself would probably be a full-time niche for coaching. So we do things like helping them to get more clear on what it is that they want, what they want from their life. Well, what is it, what is it you really want? What do you want instead? What difference would that make? Or what are their values? Well, what's important to you about having that? Or, turning over those assumptions, what are you trying to, what evidence have you got that that's true? Or look, I know you said you can't do this, but what can you do? Or, helping people to be resilient and reminding them of their strengths and their skills so that they can use in a different area. Or, what does that say about you as a person that you overcame that challenge? Or helping them to break things down and making it manageable, because it's, look, okay, so what are the 3 things that you need to do in order to move this forward? Okay, great. So what's the first simplest step that you can take to move you forward? And just thinking about those is, what kind of coaching questions, if you are a coach, what sort of things do you think you might ask your clients around those kind of obstacles to change? My chat's hung again. I can see the word change focus. What can you control? Great question, Louise. Anyone else? Acceptance, brilliant. What would you like to change? Great, my Midemi, I hope I got, or Hidemi, sorry, I hope I got your name right. What would you like to change? Anyone else? Okay, cool. Right. Well, look, I'm going to introduce you to a little model that kind of takes us through that mental process of change. But before we do that, I just want you to experience something. Oh, hang on. Sorry, the questions are just now coming through. How would you react instead? I missed the last one. Pull the chat up. Oh, there we go. Now I can see it. Change focus. What can you control? What would you like to change? Oh, if you stay the same, how would that be? That's a fantastic question, Jenny. How's the change benefiting you? Excellent. Great questions. Super stuff. Obviously got some great coaches out there. So if I could just invite you for a second, just take a pen and paper, and I want you to write your name and address, but I want you to do it with your other hand. So if you're right-handed, I want you to pick up the pen and do it with your left hand. And if you're left-handed, I want you to do it with your right hand. And just take a moment and do that. And notice what you notice.
Oh dear, Chris, this is all going to go crazy now.
And so what are we noticing? Is anyone feeling like, this is kind of uncomfortable? This is sort of awkward. Just give me some nods. Is anyone finding this a bit, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's uncomfortable. And that's what change feels like initially, isn't it? It's like, oh, I don't know about this. I'm not too sure. Okay, now imagine you're doing this and somebody comes along, they say, oh my gosh, you're not doing that right. You need to write that neater, or you need to make it bolder. You need to look, you're writing outside the lines, or look, I need that by tomorrow. Or, your kids come in and say, oh, mom, dad, I need this. Or your boss comes in, oh, I need this by tomorrow. And all these things start coming in, and you're trying to just kind of manage this change, right? And that's kind of what it feels like. So yeah, it's having that impact. So what we're going to do is we're going to get back to my screens here for a second. Get back to my slide. And I'm just going to show you, please cooperate, child. There we go. Can everyone see that? Okay. Try and get the chat box out of the way. Okay, there we go. So this is a model that you see quite a lot in change management. It's called the change curve. And if you were to go out and Google John Fisher change and transition curve, you'd pull this up. There's lots of different variations on this model. They all kind of look the same. And they're based on something from that was originally developed called the Kubler-Ross change and it was grief model, I believe. And you can probably see this is kind of a busy slide. I've done this on purpose so you can see there's a lot happening. There's a lot of emotions. We're kind of up, down, etc. I see this like with people I've worked with that are going through redundancy. There's that anxiety. Oh my God, I'm redundant. What am I going to do? And then there's like a yippee. Oh, wow, maybe something's going to be different now. It's going to be better. I could do something new. And then they start to confront the reality. And then the fear kicks in. Oh my God, am I going to really be able to do this or pay my mortgage? Or then we really start to kind of dive down and feeling quite under threat, or maybe even, oh gosh, guilty. I couldn't possibly do something new because all these people are counting on me. If it fails and I can't pay my bills, what happens then? And then we might really get stuck in depression. And you can see we can kind of go off in a few different directions. And this is not a linear process. We don't just kind of go beautifully down and up the side. We often kind of find that we circle around. We might go between different emotions. And then hopefully what happens with a bit of support is that we start to find ways to make sense of that change and find ways out the other side to accept it and realize that actually, yep, we can do this, we can master it, and we can put it in place. But the thing that's key to all of this is the reason we find this so difficult, it's our stress response. It's because our brain is wired to keep us safe, and it also needs to be efficient because we take in over 2 million bits of information a day. And so we've got to find a way to make sense of this. And so when something happens, our first response, because our primal brain kicks in, is to see it as a potential threat. So we have something called the fight, flight, or freeze response that kicks in before we decide that it's going to be okay. And obviously, as we're not living in the cave anymore, it's a slightly different response now, but it doesn't always serve us. And the thing is that we sometimes find is that, initially when that kicks in, we're doing really well, but then after a few minutes, our brain, we kind of go stupid really, because the emotional response hijacks that intelligent thinking, creative part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex bit. So we've just got to kind of find ways to calm that stress response down and just kind of make sense of that. And I was just curious, does anyone, kind of looking at that curve and just kind of thinking about that stress response, does anyone relate to this? Am I making sense? Does anyone experience this? Am I the only one that's gone through the change curve? Yeah, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so we're all kind of going, oh my God, this is all crazy. It is crazy. But, the thing is there's ways that we can manage it, isn't there? So we're going to take a look now. Oh, yes.
Before you move on, Chris,
yeah.
I was just thinking that change cycle, what I really love about that. Roberta's just asked where they can find the diagram again, and you mentioned.
Yeah, so Roberta, if you go online and initially Google, the model that I used there it's by a guy called John Fisher, and it's called his transition curve. Or if you just Google change curve, you'll pull and look at the images, you'll pull up a ton of variations on this. It's kind of a common model. And sometimes you'll see it merge with another model out there called Bridges transition model because it's kind of about endings and new beginnings and things like that. But yeah, that's where you can find it. Have you got that? Give me a nod. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying, Sharon.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I was just sort of looking back to, on the chat, and people have really related to that. And Rachel's saying she's buying a new property. Terrifying.
Oh, that's a
huge change, isn't it? Huge change. And again, what's really interesting is some of the sort of the things that we know causes some people to be sort of like really sort of in the thick of it. Other people will just breeze by it, won't they?
Yeah.
But what that particular tool I think is really sort of quite useful also just to show our clients and just to ask them where they think they are on that curve.
Yeah, it's a great point to just put that in front of someone. I do use this sometimes with my career clients and just talk about, look, where are you right now with all this? And just kind of, it's giving them, sometimes having something visual like that gives something that they can just kind of identify with. It's a little bit easier, feels a bit safer to kind of open up and start exploring what's happening for them. So yeah, you're right. That's a great tool, great suggestion, Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Louise was saying, before I head back to you, Louise was saying, I just realised that I've reset the time it takes to do something in a new way. I'm still writing my address.
Oh no! Well done you for sticking with that. I don't know that I would have stuck with it that long.
Well, Louise, you've done well, because I think I almost had the tongue sticking out the side of my mouth because I was concentrating so hard. But yeah, anyway, fantastic. Let me hand back over to you, Chris, because I know you've got some more tools.
Yeah, that's right. So look, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at what we can do to manage uncertainty, right? Because uncertainty is kind of a big thing, a part within any change, and it's the thing that we really don't like the most because it's the whole unknown thing, isn't it? And there's pretty much two ways that we cope with uncertainty. So we either, oops, sorry, go back to my slide. We either can find ways to not have as much uncertainty in our life, or we can look at the things that we can control. And there's a super tool out there by a guy called Stephen Covey. Now, he wrote a fantastic book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which it took me years to read this book. And once I read the book, I was like, why didn't I read this book? And this tool talks about our circle of concern and our circle of influence. Now, our circle of concern are things that are going on out there in the world. We have little to no control over these things. So they could be things like COVID or the economy or technologies or the weather or anything. But we do have control over some things. And that's what he called our circle of influence. So these are things we have either indirect or direct control. So indirect control would be we have control over maybe getting help from somebody or maybe persuading or influencing someone to help us. But direct control is where we can control our thoughts or our feelings and our behaviors. Yeah, we can actually work on controlling our feelings. I can show you how to do that. So we're going to look at a little exercise now using these. And I'm going to use just some pen and paper. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And so what I'd invite you to do is I'm going to give you a moment to just list down about 3 or 4 things that you would consider to be kind of a bit stressy right now. Nothing like on the really bad end of the scale, maybe something kind of in the middle. But just take a moment and write down about 3 or 4 things that you would consider to be something that's concerning you right now or annoying you. Okay. Oops, everyone's still writing? Okay. And when you finish that, what I'd invite you to do is alongside each one of these, I want you to categorize it as to whether you feel that you would have direct control over it, indirect control over it, or no control over it. So just kind of classify each of your items.
Just repeat that again, Chris. It was
so for each of the items that you wrote down, next to each one, would you write down either it's something that you feel you either have direct control, so just write direct or direct control, or indirect control. So direct control is you personally can change something about it by either how you think about it, what you do, your behaviors, your feelings. Indirect might be something that I could get some help or support from someone else with. And no control is something that's outside yourself. It's bigger than you. You really can't do much about it. So COVID, for example, would be a great one. Okay, and just classify each one of those. Okay. And when you've done that, then for each one of the items that you labeled as either having direct or indirect control, I want you to think of at least 2 actions that you feel you could take in order to manage or deal with that item, or that you could do to move forward with it. Okay, if I could just get a few nods when people have done that, then just so I can gauge where we are. Yeah.
So Marina's just asking you just to repeat the last instruction. That would be great.
Sure. Okay. So Maureen, so what we're doing is, firstly, we're listing down about 3 or 4 things that you would find that are concerning you at the moment, or that you would find stressful, that, you know, that are preying on your mind. And then for each one of those items, if you could label it as something, so it's something that you feel you have direct control over, so something you can directly do something about by either maybe changing how you think about it, or working on your emotional response, or taking some sort of action towards it, or something that maybe you can get some indirect control over, maybe by helping, getting help from somebody else, or trying to persuade someone to your way of thinking, or something that you feel that you have no control over. So something that's bigger out, you know, you have no control over it. And to be honest, you know, even with the best laid plans, we don't 100% have control over everything, do we? Because we can have the best, we can do all these great things, and we can still kind of have things happen unexpectedly, can't we? But as best we can, we want to focus on the things that we know that we can do something about. Okay, are we all good? I get some nods? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Just as a takeaway, if I was to do that in a workshop, which is where I normally do it, what I'll typically do is I would pair people up for that part of the exercise, and I would get them to brainstorm with each other the ideas for what they could do. And what we'll typically do is put do Post-it notes. So we'd write the items on a Post-it note and then put them in columns according to whether they're an item, an indirect item, or no control. And then we have a bit of fun at the end where we tear up the things that are in the no control column and just let that go, so that we can release that. So how did people find that? Is that useful?
Good for me.
Oh, someone's asking, can I put the slide up again, please? Yeah, I put the slide up again. I don't know if it'll help you with the exercise, but yeah, absolutely. Here we go. So
it looks like most people have found that really, really helpful, nice and clear, sort of using it with our clients and things, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
And it sometimes just helps you to sort of step back and reflect a little bit, hasn't it?
I often find just getting things out of your head onto paper is incredibly useful. And the whole point of this exercise, it's trying to help you to see things and be more proactive, because when we're being proactive, we're taking charge of it. We take ownership, and you know, physically we feel better because we feel like we're doing something. Our brain releases all those sort of feel good chemicals and moves us forward. But if we're being reactive, we're getting stuck in kind of being a victim of circumstance and blaming other people or other things for where we are in life. And that doesn't really, that's how we get stuck. And that's what we try to do as coaches, is help people to get out of that being stuck sort of feeling. Okay.
Sarah was just saying, how would you use it in a one-to-one coaching session? Well, I'm guessing you would do it just like you've done it just now.
Yeah, although Sarah, I think what I do is, as I say, I prefer to normally do it with Post-it notes or pen and paper, or if I was doing this virtually, there's some digital tools out there. There's one called Jamboard. There's another one called Padlet, Padlet, and Jamboard's Jamboard, that you can create like virtual Post-it notes that people can write those things on as well. So that would be another option. But yeah, just sitting side by side, or even you could potentially draw the circle of concern and get them to put their concerns on Post-it notes in it, and then, you know, classify it. It's however you want to work through it. It's just kind of raising their awareness that there's a different way of thinking about things. Okay, right. Okay, so it's all great that we've got that in hand, but we need to now figure out how we're going to deal with the emotional responses to change, right? Because it's going to happen, isn't it? It's going to keep cropping up. So we're going to move on to our second tool, and we're going to look at a little acronym, fun little acronym. Whoops, if I can get my slide to cooperate. There we go. Called Notice, Name, and Neutralize. So this is a tool that I picked up from a really fantastic book. It's called The Confidence Gap by a guy called Dr. Russ Harris. And he also wrote a book called, oh God, what is it? Oh, it escapes me. It's some, oh, I'll think of it. It's about happiness. Anyway, but this is about helping us to start to recognize that our thoughts are just like events in the mind. They just kind of come and go, like someone you'd walk past on the street, or like a passing car. And it's just kind of helping us to make some distance between ourselves and our thoughts so that we can manage this response. Okay. And I'm just curious, what do you do currently to manage actually, before we dive into that, what do you do currently to kind of manage your emotional responses to change? What do you tend to do when something comes out the blue and hits you?
Me, I usually go. I like to go for a walk or listen to some music. That really works for me.
Yeah,
Michael's saying he tries to take a breath.
That's
which
fantastic.
Is really good.
Meditation. Yes, I'm a big fan of meditation. Reframing, breathing work. Fantastic. Go for a walk. Absolutely. Lots of meditation people. Meditation developed a gap between, yep. Oh, it's all coming through here. Identifying my emotion. Oh, you guys are already ahead of me on this. Allowing myself to not always be, oh, now that's really key, to recognize that we are always in control, and that's okay, isn't it? Get the facts. Ooh, pour a glass of wine. I like that one. Get into nature. Yes, nature has been proven to really help our stress response. Keeping ourselves busy, writing possibilities, thinking about what I'm going to learn, praying. That's a great one as well. Let the tears, yeah, venting. Sometimes we just need to kind of get the emotions out before we can move on, don't we? Yeah, these are all fantastic responses. Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a couple of ideas that you can kind of expand on further. So if I just go back to my slides there for a second. And so I find it easier to remember things when I have little acronyms to kind of hang that learning on. So as I said, this tool, it's notice it, name it, neutralize it. And you might find that you only need the first two steps. Being from Texas, we do the Texas 2-step. So that's how I can remember, oh, it's the 2-step. But if you need like an additional move, you've got the neutralizing bit. So noticing is, I want to just invite you to think about one of those concerns that you were dealing with earlier, and just let's take that thought through this exercise and see how it works for you. Okay. So I want you to think of something from that previous exercise, or it could just be something that comes up for you that you feel it's a bit concerning, it's a bit troubling, it's not, and it's just kind of getting in my way. And I want you to just take a moment and just kind of notice it. Just kind of let it be in your body, in your physiology, and just kind of explore what that feels like for a minute. And then there's a couple questions that you can ask yourself. So, is this helpful? Is this thought helpful? Is it going to help me move forward, or what is it trying to tell me? Because we often find that, when something's bothering us, it usually indicates that there's some value or some need that's not being met behind there. Okay, has everyone got a thought? I'm hoping that we're moving, just get a couple nods. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so secondly, once we've done that, then the next thing to kind of start to build some separation in is we want to name it. So we have a few options here. So we can just literally identify, I'm just having the thought that I'm feeling really overwhelmed by this COVID thing. I'm just having the thought that, I'm feeling really anxious or worried. And you could even do a third person thing and say, Chris Thorne is having the thought that she is stressed today, and that even, so you're identifying yourself as a third person, or naming the emotion. Here's worrying, here's stress, here's anger. And I love this one. Name the story. So, and you can put a bit of humor with it. Aha, it's the I can't do it story. It's the world's all going to fall apart tomorrow story. You know, it's, you put it, you make a bit of, have a bit of fun with this, put a bit of humor behind it, because that again, you'll laugh, but it'll separate you from that thought. And how are people finding that? Because I got the slide up, so I can only see a couple of faces. Just give me a nod if that's resonating. Yeah. Okay. All right. And lastly, then the other options we have are we can neutralize it. So what that means is that we're going to literally take this thought or feeling and we're going to just put it in a different context to where it is now, so that we can start to see it again for what it is. It's just a mental event in the mind. So you can have a bit of fun with this, because effectively you're going to change either the words, the pictures, or the voice in your head. So if it's the words, it could be, you could do, the sky's the limit here. You could put it on a computer screen. It could be the movie credits like Star Wars. It could be a banner on the side of a bus. It could be a billboard. It could be an email. It could be a text. Or if it's a picture, you could stretch the picture out. You could shrink it down. You could make it black and white. You could crumple it up in a ball and throw it away. You could fast forward or rewind. And if it's the voice, well, you could change that voice. You could make it a cartoon character. You could sing it to a song of happy birthday. I'm not going to sing happy birthday because everyone will drop off the call, but you singing the thought, I'm having the thought that this is crap, or I'm having the thought that this is hard. So, and you just start to separate it. Or you could use it as like a radio broadcaster. I love the example from the book I just read. It's Radio Triple F, Fears, Flaws, and Failure, broadcasting 24 hours a day, bulletins on things you need to fear, be reminded of, or updates on failure. And you're probably thinking she's a bit weird now, but I bet you won't forget this. But can I just get some responses in the chat? How are we finding this? We having a bit of fun? What did you do to neutralize your thought? I'd be curious to know the ideas. Yes, it's NLP reframing, Louise. It is kind of like that, because those of you who've done NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and we look at different ways that we think about things and process memory. So yes, the techniques that I'm describing there, when we're neutralizing it, we're playing around with how our brain codes those memories in our mind. It captures it through our senses. So when we play around with those, it changes the experience that we have. So yeah, absolutely. I love the radio station. Yes, if anyone's laughing me, okay, nice to bring in some humor. Great, amazing. I like the crumpling up. Fantastic. Imagining the person in an awkward situation. Yeah, you could imagine the voice as an actor on a stage even, or someone else that's doing it. Yeah, so I really like the radio station. So obviously me being a bit silly was a good thing. Okay, great. Super. Great stuff. Well, listen, I hope this has been useful today. So just to kind of pull this all together, what we've done is, so we've talked a little bit about change and how we respond to change and what we think about it and how we emotionally go through change and what that's like for all of us, because it's the same for all of us, really. We all have a similar response. And we've looked at a few tools on how to manage the uncertainty and manage, some of those emotional responses that we have to change. So I'd just be interested to know if anyone would like to connect with me later and give me some feedback on how those exercises work with you. I'd love to know. I'm always open to that, and I love connecting with people. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Chris Thorne, or Facebook under @Chris Thorne Coaching. I'm pretty easy. So I'd be really curious to know, what your experiences are as you take those away and maybe try them out with yourself, or if you're coach with your clients, and just share your experience.
Fantastic. Oh, thanks, Chris. To be honest, I use these tools all of the time, but I forget to use them on myself sometimes. I think, that, sometimes we're so immersed, and then, we see a client, we go, oh yes, got this, really great tool to use with you and all of, but then you forget to use it on yourself. So I just loved it. And I loved the fun element that you brought in, and the radio one. I mean, I've used the circus one, which was mentioned.
Oh, yes, I forgot the circus one, the circus music. Yeah.
Yeah, the circus one. But to be perfectly honest, the radio one, this is radio. I loved that. And I love the accent. You're going to be stuck in my head now.
Hopefully that's a good thing. But the point, the point of it is, though, it sticks with you, though. It's memorable, isn't it? And I think that's what I found with these tools, is that the ones I've remembered are things that are a bit unusual like that, or so like like singing the song or the birthday. The voice one I particularly loved. I did an NLP taster day with one of our amazing coaches, Sarah Urquhart, and she did this example of the changing the voice thing. And she did an example of one of the characters from the Carry On films. And I've never forgot it because it's the guy, it was something like, oh, you're a bad girl. And she changed it. Oh, you're a bad girl, Sarah. And honestly, we all laughed. But I tell you what, 2 years later, I remembered it. So I think, yeah, sometimes doing silly and memorable things like that really helps. But it also, importantly, it just helps us to actually get that gap, doesn't it? Just to kind of realize that you can choose a different response.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, knowing that, we can't always have control over the situation, but we can start to influence how we respond to that particular situation. Dawn was saying, thanks for the fun during this weird time in our lives. I just think it's important, isn't it? Yeah, we come on these calls to get tools and ideas, but if we go away a little bit boosted and we've had a little bit of fun, I think that's really important. Somebody's asked again, how they find you, Chris. So maybe you could just sort of tell people how they find you on LinkedIn. Are you putting it in the chat box, perhaps? I don't know.
Yes, I am.
That would be, yeah, that would be great. So, it's so easy, isn't it? We need to make sure that, not just about using the tools with our clients, but using them on ourselves as well, not to forget that self-work to make sure that we're constantly being the best that we can be.
Well,
any specific questions for Chris at all before we start to come to a close? Can't believe the hour's almost up.
Yeah, it's gone quick.
It does. But say any specific questions, pop them in the chat box, or feel free to unmute yourself. Other than that, I will tell you what to expect next week. While people are thinking, maybe typing in the box or not, that's great. Just to let you know, next week we are again going to be here 10 o'clock next week. And next week I have the wonderful Sarah Bramall Coaching. And she's going to be talking to you next week about mindset coaching. And a whole range of things there. And again, some tools to take away. Marina's just asked, how can we translate this with teenagers? Well, that's my particular niche, working in that area. But I don't know if you want to answer that before I jump in. Chris, have you got any thoughts on working with young people?
I think the thing there is that yeah, it's interesting because I was at a coaching conference recently, and I was listening to a coach talking about working with teenagers, and he was saying, actually, in a funny way, sometimes working with teenagers is a bit easier because they don't have as many, I guess he called it bad, there's not as many emotional things kind of getting in the way because they haven't had as many life experiences. So sometimes it can be a little more straightforward. I think the key thing is probably really trying to make sure that you use language that they're going to relate to and they speak to. And, not using a lot of real technical terms and kind of putting this in real everyday terms and talking about feelings and thoughts. And I wouldn't get too technical in terms of how we separate from emotions. I would always explain to people this whole thing about, how the brain works in terms of the safe and efficient thing, because it's a very quick way for us to kind of help them understand that, look, the reason you're doing this stuff, it's biology, a lot of it. So all we're doing is we're trying to help you to kind of make sense of that so that you can figure out a better way to do things that's going to, help change your life, really. But I think just a very simple understanding of that is really helpful for anybody because it just kind of normalizes the experience. And, but yeah, I think anything that you can do to get people to sit down and write things out, or you could even draw these things out, you could use a different medium. And depending on your teenager, if they're a real visual person, they might like doing something like that. Or it's, if they're more auditory or musical, they might like the whole auditory side. Or like if they're more of a hands-on person, doing something with drawing, or even standing up. You could get people to stand up and step into these circles, into the circle of concern. And what does that feel like? And into the circle of influence, what's that feel like? And get people to move. Or I'm a big fan of getting people to move around as well, even though we're virtual. I think that's really good. So I just try and keep it as I think just kind of as normal as possible in terms of just the way you describe it in everyday language and keeping it simple.
Maybe we'll do a little coaching conversations with sort of an NLP, but certainly in my experience, Marina, just really, really quickly, teens absolutely love the NLP stuff. And I've done, have you done the NLP training yet, Marina? No, you haven't. So they adapt to it really, really well. So, you know, then there's some fantastic, very, very creative exercises. I've created and used tools around creating confidence as if it were a pair of shoes, you know, things like that. So they really do, yeah.
That's one of my favorite. I learned that on my NLP course. So one of my coaches, I have my silver dancing shoes. I love that. Yeah.
Well, this particular young lady, I worked with her during her GCSEs, and we created confidence flip-flops, which she put on when she needed that little bit of extra. And funnily enough, I'm working with her again now. She's now just taking her degree, final year, taking her degree, and she still talks about the fact that she uses her confidence flip-flops. So, you know, it's really, this stuff is so powerful.
It's got to be sticky.
Yeah.
Sticky.
And it's fun, and it's creative, and it's a great way to look at things.
Yeah. And I know that conversation with Sarah next week. I know Sarah Bramwell, and I know that's going to be a great conversation. And, you know, I'd encourage any of you, if you're not a coach already, go along to the 2-day event, because you really will get some huge value there. I mean, it's a fantastic event.
It's online now, Chris. So we don't do a two-day live event.
Sorry, yes, of course.
Won't allow us to.
Of course, yes.
Do the event. It's an online 2-hour event.
Yeah, but go do the event. And there's also taster days for things like the NLP as well that you can go along to. And they're really good to get an insight.
Thank you for that lovely endorsement as well. It's been fantastic as ever. We always run out of time, and there's always just so much. You're getting a little clap there from Roberta. So that's really lovely. I know you've really enjoyed it. So mindset management next week, and we've had such a variety. If you feel that there's a particular topic that you'd like to hear about next year, I'm planning next year's coaching conversations. We're going to be doing them monthly. If you've got any ideas of things that you would love us to bring to you, then drop us a line, let us know, either via the socials, or you can always email us directly at the Coaching Academy, and I will make sure that I pick those up. Thank you, Chris. It's been amazing. Thanks. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. I really enjoyed it. And stay safe, everybody. Have a great week, and I'll see you all next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thanks.